Welcome back, Embers, or if you're new here, my name is Stone, my pronouns are they, them, and let's get into it. So if you're new here, I'd recommend going to my playlist for this, watching from the intro. Otherwise, we are panning two palettes this year. I'm panning my Divina palette, and my goal is to just get 5 uses in each of these shades. It's a 12 pan palette. And then I'm actually properly panning the Carnival 3. My goal for this year is to get at least half the palette panned, and then next year get the other palette panned, or the other half of the palette panned, because it's a 40 pan palette, so there's a lot in here. And I'm very excited for the update, so let's just jump straight into it. We're going to start with the least exciting part, which is my Divina palette. And this one has changed quite a bit in the last month, and here's what it looks like now. I don't know if I actually have a picture of last month. As you can see, this shade is cleared out. So I did not end up using it 5 times, but I did throw it out because I just cannot get this shade to work for me. It is always patchy. It just ruins a lot of my looks. It just doesn't work for me. So I just decided it wasn't worth the effort. So I decluttered it. So basically I used it 3 times in February, and then I used it once this year, remembering that I didn't really like it, and I just had such a bad time with it, I decided to just get rid of it. So that is empty with 4 uses. So then let's actually start talking about top to bottom. So this green shimmer is Parthenos, and in October I used it twice for a total of 4 uses this year, so I only have to use it one more time this year to be done with it. I'll Be Tender I did not use this month, and I have I have 3 uses in that, so I need 2 more uses, but I think I'm going to get that this month and next month. The gold has already been used 5 times. The red has been used once, so I need to actually use it 4 more times in the next 2 months. The green has already been used 5 times. Cadra, the teal, I did not use this month, so it still needs 4 uses on it. Of course, I used, like I said, Vertigo, the purple, once and then decluttered it. It's just so streaky. It just doesn't work for my eyes at all. The red I did not use, and I need 4 more uses on it. The dark green has already been done, and actually all of these bottom rows have been done already. So this month I'm thinking of focusing on greens. So the only green I have left in this is this one, so I'm going to be focusing on that one, and then I will talk about the rest of the goals after I do my update for this palette. So next is the fun part, the Carnival 3 Love Tahiti palette, and this time I am going to continue the trend that I did last time of only talking about the shades that I used, and we won't talk about everything else because it's a 40 pan palette and it takes forever. So I'm also going to try and include swatches from now on because I am doing this same palette next year. But this is what this palette looked like last month. And this is what this palette looks like this month. I hope you can see up close the difference in those. So let's just go over the shades that I did use. So Forest I used 3 times this month for a total of 17 uses in the palette. It does not have pan yet, but it does have a good dip, and this is going to be my focus for this month. As you can see, it is not the first of the month, so this look does not count in the palette. I do have a couple uses on it for this month, but we'll talk about those next month. And Tropics I used 4 times this month for a total of 14 uses. So we're getting close to that 15 use threshold that I can usually start expecting a pan, and it is getting a good dip on it, but it's not quite at pan yet. But I think this is something I could definitely pan before the end of the year if I really tried to. The next one I used is Reef right under that, and I actually use this in a look with coral, which we'll talk about later, but I only use this once for a total of 9 uses. So we're getting to that we're slowly getting to that 15 use threshold, but it doesn't really have any dip at all. So I think this one's going to take more like 20, 30 uses to hit pan on, or I'm going to have to use it a lot. And I think that's going to be a next year thing. So the next shade we used was Coral, and I used Coral one time for a total of 5 uses. And again, this doesn't really have a dip. I think there's some hard pan in the bottom right-hand corner of the shade, but I've been using the shade right above it. It, again, doesn't really have a dip, but it does look used now, so that's good. Then after that, I used Bear, the next shade down, one time, probably in the same look, I'm going to assume, for a total of 12 uses. After that, I also used Hibiscus one time. I'm also going to assume in the same look, for a total of 10 uses. Hibiscus already does have pan on it, but it is such a small pan, and I would love to expand the pan before the end of next year, because again, I will be extending this project into next year to try and finish to pan every shade in this palette. After that, I did end up using Mango once or twice. I think just once. I used it once this month. It already has pan on it, but I've used it 27 times, and Mango is the pan with the biggest, does have the biggest pan in this palette, and is probably the first one that's going to be finished up, because eventually I do want to try and finish all these shades up. And then we go to Fruity, this really pretty purple shade, and I used this one time for a total of 6 uses, and I assume this was when I was doing my purple look, so I did a lot of looks that were purple with green. So I used Forest and the purples a lot. I used Tropics with the purples a lot. Just kind of a Beetlejuice style was what I was using during the Halloween month, during October, quite a few times. The next shade I used is Rose Pink. What? Oh, Rose Pink is this pink shimmer that took me a while. I was like, what shade is that? I actually used that twice. Yes, I used that twice this month for a total of 11 uses. It really doesn't have a dip, and I thought it definitely would, but I do tend to use it like right on my inner corner, just like right in the middle, so I don't use a lot of it when I do use it. Then I was using Blackberry, and I used Blackberry 5 times this month, and as you can see, it has a nice pan on it. So like I said, I was using purples and greens a lot, and Blackberry was the one I was really focusing on. I just felt like it was such a pretty color. So it took 15 uses to hit pan on it, which is so perfect for me. Then after that, the next thing I focused on was Amethyst. And I don't know if you'll be able to fully tell in the pictures, but there is a tiny little pan in Amethyst, and I used this an additional 5 times for a total of 9 uses. So the pan in this is using my finger sometimes for the bigger looks, and then sometimes I'd use it in my lower lash line, and I would take just a small brush and kind of like an eyeliner brush and use it that way. And so the pan actually has 2 different size dips. There's clearly a finger mark in there, but there's also a line going from the pan down, which is probably why I have such a tiny little pan. I think actually there's some shadow stuck to the pan, and I think it would be slightly bigger if it wasn't sticking to the bottom of the pan. But yeah, I ended up panning it using it kind of like an eyeliner for the bottom lash line, and so it does have a really small pan, but it does have pan nonetheless, and I'm so excited about that. So that is, oh, and I used Black Beach 2 more times for a total of 5 uses, so now I finally have 5 uses on that, because I did decide last month that I wanted to finish everything which means I'm going to have to start working on Black Beach. So that is the update. I forgot to swatch anything, so let me just quickly swatch this for you and I will be right back. Okay, so I swatched them all. So these aren't straight, neither am I, so it makes sense. Sorry, a little gay humor for y'all. So these ones down here are kind of the one-offs that I used every once in a while. You can barely see bear, which makes sense because it's called bear and it kind of looks like my bear skin but pink. And then these ones are the ones I really focused on. These two are the ones we got pan on. These two are the ones I'm going to actually focus on next month. So yeah, that's kind of the color story. I was working on mostly this side for Halloween, and then occasionally I used these, I think all one time each of these. But yeah, mostly I was focusing on these shades right here. So let's talk about goals. So goals for this palette are going to be, like I said at the beginning, my goal is to have half of this palette panned. And that means I just need one more shade with pan on it, which I think I'm going to try and make Forest. If I can get Tropics while I'm panning Forest, because I usually use them together, I'm using them together today, I would love that. That would be amazing. But the goal really for this month is just to pan Forest. And then once I have Forest panned, which I'm hoping to do kind of in the beginning of this month, once I have Forest pan, my goal is to get more uses on all of these and get as close to finishing up my goal on this as possible. And once I have my goal finished for this, either this month or next month, depending on how it goes, my goal is just going to be, instead of focusing on pan, is to be making my life easier for next year. So the goal for next year is going to be finishing everything, panning everything else. So what I want to do is kind of use shades that don't have as much usage in and just kind of try and get some dips going in other shades, or make sure everything has at least 5 uses in it and then work on getting them to 10 uses. But there's a lot of shades in here that don't really have any pan at all, and I'd like to focus on those just to make it a little easier for next year. And that's going to be my goal through the rest of November and December once I have one pan in here and I start working on these. So those are my goals for next month and kind of a little bit December too. And I think as well as doing swatches, I'd like to also, as well as doing swatches, I would also like to add for at least the Carnival 3 palette, a slideshow at the end, like I've seen a lot of other people do for their project pans, of my progress throughout the year. So I think I'm going to be rolling that quite soon, right at the end of this video. And then also, we should talk about pan percentage, because I never remember to talk about it. Actually, I don't know my pan percentage, so I'm just going to put it up here. Wow, that's interesting. Hopefully I remember to actually do that. Fingers crossed. If not, maybe next time. But definitely for next year, I want to start talking about pan percentage more. Yeah. So, I think that's everything, and we can roll the slideshow now.